No.
At lunch we'll discuss.
Okay, good. So our next speaker, I don't have my glasses on, but NSF supports Advance at NYU, how and why it works. Introduction will be by, can we read on here, Carol Reiss? Yes, all right.
It is my distinct pleasure to introduce Daniel Stein, who is my dean for science at NYU. He got his PhD at Princeton and is a condensed matter and statistical mechanics physicist. He then became a faculty member at Princeton before going to University of Arizona, where he was the chair of physics. Was recruited to NYU 6 years ago to just be a member of our physics department. But the previous dean for science left and went to become the dean of arts and sciences at another school. And Dan was then impressed to become the dean for science, and it has been a fantastic decision by the then dean of arts and sciences at NYU. The women's faculty that are in the sciences, and we are very few in number, despite the fact that there are about 25% women at NYU, the fraction of women in the sciences is lagging, approached Dan and said that we really need to meet with him on a regular basis, and we established a wonderful working relationship. And that led to the development of Dan's submission of an advance application, and he's here to talk to us about the advance grant and its impact at NYU. Dan.
Well, thank you very much, Carol. I appreciate the introduction, and I want to thank the Rosalind Franklin Society for inviting me here. It's a real honor to be here, and it's also been a real pleasure. I've enjoyed very much the talks I've heard yesterday and so far today, and I've enjoyed our discussions, and I've learned quite a lot from them. So I'm here to talk about our advanced program at NYU. It's one of many advanced programs. There are common features to all of them, and then there are some differences. And I will tell you about how we have implemented it at NYU and what some of our programs are. That's really the how. The why, I'm not so sure I can tell you about why what has worked, but what I will do is I will cut out a small part of the talk to leave some room for discussion so that we can have a discussion, because I think that would be helpful both for me and it might be more fun for everybody else as well. And if there's not much discussion, at least we'll be back on schedule. So, so this is, as I said, it's run out of my office. Let me begin by telling you where things were when I came in as dean. When I came in, so I started, as Carol said, I came as a regular professor and was enjoying myself and having a good time. And then, well, Carol told you the rest of the story. I don't need to go there. And in September of 2006, I took over as dean. Now, I had been the head of a physics department at Arizona for 10 years prior to that. And I had made it there one of my chief priorities. When I got there was one woman, faculty member in the physics department. When I left, there were quite a few more. And that was due to a very aggressive stance on my part. How I ended up getting involved in that, I couldn't really say. I do have two daughters. I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but I think I felt strongly about this even before that. I'm trained as a theoretical physicist, so I'm fine if you ask me about statistical many-body theory. I'm no expert on gender studies. I do try to follow the literature, but I find particles and fields easy to understand. Human beings are much, much harder. So I just do what I can. But to me, all ideology and studies aside, for me, it really comes down to simply, basically, a matter of fairness. When I talk to people, I use the same words we all use. I say that it is extremely important for the health of science, which is true. There's no question about that we have much greater representation of women and minorities, and that we interest more young people in these fields. There's no question that's true. It's also true for the health of the university. All of these are true. And I believe in those things, but I think ultimately what drives me is simply a strong sense that there's a fairness issue here that has not been fully resolved. Now, as I told you, I was the chair of a physics department, and I have to say, when I came here yesterday, I was struck by the fact that I was an extremely tiny minority. And it's not what you think. There's that as well. But what I'm thinking of is the fact that I was one of maybe the only, I know we have an information scientist here, maybe the only physical scientist here, or maybe there's one or two others that I'm leaving out. Everybody here is from the biological and medical sciences. And it's clear that in the biological and medical sciences, we have a very long way to go in order to achieve parity and equity. But let me tell you that you guys are way ahead of us in the physical sciences. I hate to sound so pessimistic, but if 10 years from now, in the physical and the mathematical sciences, we can get to the place just where the biological and medical sciences are now, we will have accomplished a great deal. And that makes me sad to say. I really do hope, I'll talk to the leadership of the Rosalind Franklin Society, that more physical and mathematical scientists become involved in the society, because it is very badly needed there. So with that little spiel, I guess I will continue. So this was the situation that I was faced with. Is there a laser pointer, or should I'll just use my finger. Oh, there it is. Oh. It was hidden. It's hidden in front of me. Okay, so this shows the demographics of our science faculty population from 2000 to 2008. Our advanced program began right at this time. And as you can see, the numbers grew. There was a lot of growth in the sciences at NYU, and NYU has fairly small science. We only have 5 science departments. We also have a couple in Courant Institute, Math and Computer Science, and that's pretty much it. I'm not counting the medical school, obviously, or the dental school. I'm talking about academic science at Washington Square, as we say. What you will see, if you look over this almost 10-year period, is an absolutely flat distribution. There was a lot of hiring that took place during this year, and the numbers of faculty grew quite a lot. But if you look at the percentage of women, well, it's shown over here, over men, it is unbelievably flat. And not only is it flat, but it is at less than half the national average of women in the sciences integrated over all of the sciences. That number, when I looked at it a couple of years ago, is at about 30%. I imagine it's probably fairly close to that still today. So we were at half that level. That is just atrocious. Taking over a science division that looks like this simply was not pleasant. Now, it looks here like the picture is static. It actually is not. It's not that women were not hired. I will show you hiring data in a little while. But there was a lot of turnover. There were some retirements. 1 or 2 women back in the early part of the decade did not get tenure. And then there was some transfer of some groups from arts and science to other parts of NYU. And this just shows you what's in the science division within arts and science at NYU. So in fact, there was some change going on, but obviously nowhere near enough to get to where we needed to be. So that was a situation that faced me when I first came in as dean. This just gives you a breakdown of the women percentages of female faculty in the different departments. As I said, math and computer science are not in FAS, and I do not have any control over hiring there, but I included them anyway just to give you an idea. The interesting thing about this, the numbers are very small, but surprisingly, with small numbers, you'd expect statistics to be all over the place. But what's interesting is that the percentages here pretty much track the distribution of percentages across the different fields. As you see, we have 1 out of 20, like 5% in chemistry. That's one woman. We had a couple in physics, and you'll see more in psychology and some more in biology, which does reflect sort of the national trends, that there do tend to be more women scientists in those areas and fewer in the physical sciences. So the distribution actually was fairly consistent with what you had nationally. It's just that the numbers were far, far lower than what they were nationally. Now, let me say at the beginning, I want to make it clear that numbers are not everything. There's a lot more to what's going on than simply counting how many, women versus men you have and so on. But numbers are not, they do mean something. I mean, we do have to pay attention to them. They're not the whole story, but they're an important part of the story, and it's one of the few, hard bits of data that we really can get our hands on. So it is, I think, important to take a look at these numbers and to see what one can do with them. So as Carol said, when I first became dean, I did something that I had done at the University of Arizona. Well, at the University of Arizona, I had to wait a while because we only had one woman when I came in as head. But what I did was I started to have lunches once or twice a semester with women's science faculty throughout the sciences, and including in math and computer science at Quran. And the idea was to familiarize me with the problems that they were facing as they saw it. I wasn't that interested in going to male colleagues and saying, what do you think of the situation of women at NYU? I wanted to hear what the problems were, and at a lot of these meetings, especially the early ones, it was easy to perceive there was quite a lot of frustration, there was some anger, and there was some questions like, what makes you think you're going to do anything better than what's done? And I said, I don't know, we'll just have to see. But the idea was simply to listen and to hear what people wanted, and that's pretty much. I mean, if there's anything, if we've had any successes, and if there's anything at all that that we can say what worked, probably the biggest thing is nothing very esoteric. As I said, I'm no expert in these things. What I've pretty much done is simply to try to listen to what the people there on the ground are experiencing and what they tell me they need, and then simply try to get it for them. Many administrators will claim they do that, but many administrators I've noticed, especially at NYU, tend to think they know what people need and assume that what they want is what other people want, and then they go out and get that, and that usually doesn't work. So one thing that came out of these lunches, there were a lot of things that came out of them, but one thing that came out of them was that it was brought to our attention that there were these programs like the Nsf Advanced Program, and that it would be nice if we applied for it. And so we immediately, my associate dean, Maria Shamus, and I immediately started to look into this, and we sat down over the course of a week, and we did nothing else but write this proposal. And we were told that it's very unlikely we would get it the first time. The NSF at that time, it's changed a little bit, had two major advanced programs. One was the Institutional Transformation Grant. This was a large multi-million-dollar grant over 5 years over a large part of the university aimed at institutional transformation. This was a smaller paid grant, which was a 3-year, $500,000 grant, much more narrowly focused. The trouble is, at the time that we applied for it, they were already saying that what they wanted this to do was to accomplish institutional transformation. Now, at NYU, the sciences had long been relegated to sort of a backwater. The law school, the medical school, the Stern School of Business, the art school, those were the big schools, and arts and science was not, and the science in particular was not at the forefront. So it's sort of hard to see how we could simply leverage what we've done in the sciences and then somehow try to transform the institution. But what we did is we tried to do various small programs as tests of principle, and then say, look, you can do this on a larger scale. The cost to benefit is huge. The benefit to cost is huge. And simply to show that certain things could be done and did receive and would receive a response. So there were two goals in our advanced program. One, as I said, and this was what we wrote directly to NSF, was transformation of the institutional climate through advancement, through programs that facilitate the recruitment and the advancement of women in science. And then the second part, which is a much smaller part, this is really 90% of it, was to ask for some funds to promote diversity studies. Work contributing to studies asking why it is that the gender balance in the sciences is what it is. So the departments that participate are the departments that I'm responsible for: biology, chemistry, neuroscience, physics, psychology, and also a half a department, the physical anthropology. The Courant Institute, we have included them in this, computer science and math, and they have access to all of our programs, although, as I said, I cannot control hiring there. And we have partner institutions. We have partnered with Columbia University and with Hunter College. Hunter College in particular, everybody here probably knows, or many people know, Virginia Valian, and Virginia was very, very helpful. She wrote a letter of support when we applied for the grant. We had her speak recently. She runs a gender equity program at Hunter that I think is a model for the rest of the country. And if you do get a chance, if you haven't done this, I strongly urge you to take a look at their webpage, the gender equity program at Hunter. It's quite remarkable what they've done. Now, one thing that is missing here, I'm sorry to say, is engineering. NYU recently acquired an engineering school, Poly, at Brooklyn, and we simply, the amounts of money were too small. I wanted to include them, but the amounts of money were too small, and we have not been able to do that. Engineering is maybe even worse than physics in terms of women, representation of women, or at least as bad. And at some point, if we get a larger grant, then I would like to include engineering as well. So this is our team. This is my entire office. So it's quite small. Maria and I pretty much wrote the grant. We administer the program, and then the other people in our office help us administer it. And we have a steering committee as well. Carol, who introduced me as a member, and we also have several faculty, a couple of other deans, and people in the central administration. So the steering committee typically meets once a semester, although, as Carol might tell you, we're a little behind this year, but we'll get there, to help us plan, to think of programs, to also look over grant proposals as part of the program, and so on. So let me tell you just a little bit about some of the things that we do. Again, the things that you see here really have been in direct response to what we were told people wanted. And in particular, the very, very important is networking and visibility in the field. And so in response to requests that I heard at my lunches, we have research challenge grants. We have dependent care travel awards. I'll tell you about those in a minute. Those are paid for out of my office, not out of the NSF grant, and travel awards. We also have professional development workshop series. Some of these programs, some of these are available only to women faculty, some are available to men and women. One thing that is very, very important is to get the men involved and to make them feel like, this program benefits them too, and that they have some ownership of this as well. If you simply do something where they feel excluded, which I've seen in the past has sometimes been the case, then you're not helping things as much as you could be. And then very important for me has also been recruitment, and we've had some programs there as well, which I'll tell you about. So the science awards the travel awards have been very popular. These are particularly aimed towards junior faculty, although any woman faculty member can get one. And they simply award money to travel to conferences or do field work. The Dependent Care Travel Awards is operated out of my office. It's open to both women and men. It allows people to short-term care so they can go to a conference or do field work. And then the Research Challenge grants provide seed funds of the order of 10 to 15K for projects that they can't get funding for yet, but give them some preliminary data so that they can apply for grants later on. A measure of the success of this is that our funding per capita over the last few years has gone up by a factor of 2, which is a tremendous increase. At least some of this, I think, is partially due to this. Then we have a number of programs. I told you about Virginia Valley, and I'm going to run through a lot of these grants writing workshop series, again, open to men and women, helping professional development, networking, and so on. This op-ed seminar was of interest. This was proposed by one of our women. It trains women who write. If you look at the New York Times op-ed page, you'll see very few women compared to men, and this encourages women to write op-eds and submit them. And then mentoring and meeting and events. I'll just skip through all of those. And then the second goal, to promote diversity studies at NYU. We've established a couple of research grants in that area as well. Let me skip, we had to do a survey at the very beginning, but let me skip to how we've done in terms of recruitment. So when I came in, we were right at this point over here, and I made it very, very clear that recruitment of women was a very, very important part of what we do. And this is in the ways where the rubber meets the road. It's also one of the most difficult things to change. We have managed to do that. I'm very happy with the results of this graph. You see now we've actually hit the 50-50 point. That just happens. It's not like we've aimed at that point. It just happens to be how we did last year. But you'll see that there has been a major change in the attitude of hiring. I mean, I think the basic point is that people mostly have goodwill. They mostly want to hire women. But I've noticed that in the end, we've heard a lot of these things here today. They'll have women on short lists, but then somehow they never quite get to that point when they have to choose one person. And they'll often say, well, can we have two people? I know where they're getting at there. And, I have to hold their feet to the fire. And you have to make it clear to them that you're very serious about this. So simply saying we want to hire more women, which is what you hear all the time when everybody does, that leads to this. To get down to here, you have to pursue much more aggressive tactics. So how have the demographics changed? Well, you see we're at a better place now. By the way, this looks a little funny. What happened over here is not that it's not that women left NYU, but a group in psychology was transferred out of the psychology department as part of a structural reorganization to another part of NYU, which is why the percentage of women went down. But in any case, when I came in, we were at this point at about roughly half the national average. Now we're up to 22%. Not perfect. We still have a long way to go. That's averaged over all departments, but it is a noticeable improvement, and we certainly intend to try to continue that trend. And finally, the demographics in the different departments. So we now have 3 women in the chemistry department. If I didn't show you the numbers, I could say we've tripled the number in the chemistry department, but that would sort of be cheating. So we are doing better, but as you can see, we really still have a long way to go. So that's just a very quick and rough sketch of what we've done at NYU. For the future, we have a grant proposal into Elsevier to try to continue some of these programs we're waiting to hear from. And mostly, I've been spending a lot of time over the last year looking for donors or foundations who will be willing to put this program on a more permanent basis. Once this program is on a sound basis financially, I think that will be in much better shape. Right now, we're still doing it as we can get grants, but I would like to see it on a more long-term basis. So thank you very much.